The thing I think about is how much I didn't have and didn't realize I didn't have it until I moved into the dorms, and then you would see that the person next to you actually had a computer and and he actually had a phone. I mean, it was a struggle. I mean, when you're an athlete and you live in the dorms, you don't get any money because all your scholarship money goes towards your food and your living. And then when spring ball is over, the food stops. So you really have to kind of have either money in the bank or parents that can pay for that. But some of the funny stories, man. I mean, we used to do some things that were just kind of stupid, but we were little kids. We didn't have a lot of money to eat, so what we would do is, in those days, when they would deliver pizza, they never locked the doors. So what we would do is we'd order 5 pizzas for the different dorms, and when the pizza man went to go deliver pizza for one dorm, we'd open the door, grab 2 or 3 of them, and run back to the dorm so we could eat dinner because we didn't have no food.
Live from Gil Silva Family Studio in Salinas, California, the salad bowl of the world. Welcome to the podcast designed to inspire, the only one built with ganas.
You're gonna work harder than you ever worked before. And the only thing I ask from you is ganas, desire, haircut. If you don't have the ganas, I will give it to you because I'm an expert.
From the founders of Gil Basketball Academy that empowers youth to play hard, work hard, study hard, and overcome obstacles.
People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you you can't do it. You want something, go get it. Period.
Real interviews with real people about real life.
You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
And now it's time for Ganas, leading from the heart.
This episode was sponsored by Plaza Properties. Plaza Properties and Dan O'Brien have managed departments in Salinas since the 1980s. Plaza Properties believes in the mission of the Gil Basketball Academy and is proud to contribute to our podcast.
Soy Alberto Murillo de Sunrun Solar. Una de las mejores movidas económicamente para un dueño de casa es poner paneles solares a su casa. Mi vida cambió desde que mi esposa y yo compramos un sistema solar de la Costco. Se me hizo tan increíble la oportunidad que en cuanto miré que era una buena movida, apliqué para trabajar en Sunrun Solar. Ahora Sunrun está dando hasta $5,000 por persona que quiera trabajar un poco y recomendar a parientes y amistades para poner paneles solar. Los biles de luz seguirán aumentando más y más espantosamente que toda la gente que califica pondrá paneles solar a sus casas y se ahorrarán miles de dólares. Para poder ahorrar miles o poder ganar hasta $5,000, háblenme ahora mismo. Alberto Murillo, 831-206-6880. 831-206-6880.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ganas, Leading from the Heart. I am Jose Gil, coach, teacher, father, husband, and a lifelong believer in ganas, which translates to desire. Desire, which our next podcast guest. Today on the show, we are privileged to have one of my lifelong friends and one of my brothers that has had a huge impact on my life as a person, William Henry. Thank you for being on the show, my man.
No problem, and thank you for having me.
As a
Lifelong friends. That's what I said. We're brothers, actually.
Brothers, hermano, my brother from another mother. And we talk about, you've had a things in your life have, for many of us, we just dream of, being considered the number one high school football wide receiver in the nation, All-American, playing Division I football, and just being an amazing person that goes with all those accolades. We want to know more about you and your story because besides the football portion of it, I want our podcast listeners to know what kind of person you are. Currently site manager at Shelter in Place in the Bay Area, right? San Francisco, to be specific, impacting lives, changing lives, and giving back to those in need. So without any further ado, can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself, your upbringing, your family, education?
Yeah. So I was actually born in Richmond, California. Lived there till I was about 12. And then at about 12 years old, started to get into trouble in school, started ditching school. And so my mother shipped me to live in what's known as Pismo Beach, San Luis Obispo area. And what people don't know is that there's a prison in San Luis Obispo. It's called CMC, California Men's Colony. And my dad was in prison for about 5 to 6 years and got released and paroled there. And so when I started getting in trouble in school, my mother figured it would be a better place for me to live and grow up and better education. So she shipped me to live there, which was probably the best thing she could have ever did. The education, the schools were much better. There was really nothing to do but go to school and play sports. When I got down there, I immediately dove into playing football, basketball, running track. I thought I was pretty good, I think I was okay. I had some teammates like Jamie Martin, who played 15 years in the NFL, played with Napoleon Kaufman, Mark Brunell, and some other people. And then I got a chance to run track. I was a state champion in the 110 high hurdles, and then became a pretty decent football player with everybody else's help. So the majority of my family's in the Bay Area, Richmond, San Francisco, Oakland. I was the only one that was, besides my father, that was in Pismo Beach. So.
And let's talk about that. You were an All-American football player coming out of Arroyo Grande High School. What was that feeling like, knowing that you were considered the top wide receiver in the nation at that time for a 17, 18-year-old kid?
Yeah. At the time, because I ran track too, and I was probably one of the best 110 high hurdlers in high school in the country as well. But I had no idea. It was, for me, it was kind of like, I really didn't watch college sports at that time. Like, I wasn't really into sports like I am now. I was a Laker fan. I rarely watched football. I was more into like surfing and skating. And so at the time, I really didn't understand the magnitude of literally being the best wide receiver in the country until I started receiving letters in the mail. And I would get upwards of about 50 letters a day. So many letters in the mail that they had to change the address. And my mail started coming to the school, and I would go through my mail in the morning instead of at home. But I really had no idea of what that meant. I think when I realized how popular I was is one day I got a phone call, or over the intercom system, I was told to go to the coach's office. And when I walked in, Lou Holtz was sitting there with my high school football coach. And at that time, Rocket Ishmael and Tony Rice, Jerome Bettis, all those guys were at Notre Dame. And so I knew those guys, or knew of them. And so to see the head coach sitting in the office, there to talk to me was
So let's back up. So you show up to school, high school.
Right.
High school.
I'm in class that day.
I'm in class, and you hear over the intercom, come to the office, and usually that's your mother's picking you up, or your parents are dropping off something, your PE clothes that you forgot at home, or you're in trouble, right? Or you're in trouble. And this was Lou Holtz.
But at the time I was getting recruited, so
yes,
I kind of knew that coaches would come by. Like I'd had the USC coach come by, the University of Washington coach come by. I'd get phone calls from, coach at the University of Nebraska, stuff like that. But it was Notre Dame, so to see Lou Holtz sitting in the office, I was like, ooh,
yeah,
wow.
You felt like Rudy, right? You felt Rudy, like the movie Rudy, who was at Notre Dame. And so, besides Notre Dame, what other schools were recruiting you? And what were your top choices? What were your flattering choices at the time?
I think every Pac-10 school recruited me except for Stanford. Um, I mean, I was getting recruited by Purdue, Northwestern, Florida. I didn't get recruited by Miami, but Florida State. I got recruited by almost every college in the country. Um, my thing when I had discussions with my mom about school was one is she really didn't want me to go to school in the South, because we're from California and there was this kind of scary thing going on in the South. And two, for me, I rarely ever played football in the rain, so I definitely didn't want to go anywhere where it snowed. But my college coach told me take your visits. So I went to Notre Dame, I went to Nebraska, I went to Arkansas for a track visit, went to University of Utah. Uh, I didn't have to take an official visit to USC because I went there almost every weekend to watch the games, and I didn't have to pay for it, so we just drove down. And then I went to Fresno State, and I chose Fresno State because it was close to home. I fell in love with the coaches. They threw the ball, and it was in California. My mother didn't fly. She rarely drove, and so it was a chance for her for me to still play big time ball, and she could see me play.
So now at Fresno State, because that's where we met, and
Right.
some
First day of school.
Yes.
We met first day of school.
Yes. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So you have you had, I remember in our dorm we had Lorenzo Neal, great NFL player. He was
Right.
at that time he was a California high school athlete of the year, male athlete of the year, right?
Senior year, right.
His
Right.
senior
He was a
year.
wrestler and he played football, right?
And he played
yeah.
football. So let's talk about some of those stories and some of those experiences at Fresno State, because there's many amazing stories that you have, and I love hearing them, and I want our podcast listeners to hear them because it was part of your journey.
Yeah, I think that the thing I think about is how much I didn't have and didn't realize I didn't have it until I moved into the dorms, and then you would see that the person next to you actually had a computer and he actually had a phone. I remember, I mean, it was a struggle. I mean, when you're an athlete and you live in the dorms, you don't get any money because all your scholarship money goes towards your food and your living. And then when spring ball is over, the food stops. So you really have to kind of have either money in the bank or parents that can pay for that. But some of the funny stories, man. I mean, we used to do some things that were just kind of stupid, but we were little kids. We didn't have a lot of money to eat, so what we would do is, in those days when they would deliver pizza, they never locked the doors. So what we would do is we'd order 5 pizzas for the different dorms, and when the pizza man went to go deliver pizza for one dorm, we'd open the door, grab 2 or 3 of them, and run back to the dorm so we could eat dinner because we didn't have no food.
Yes.
Me personally, everybody on my floor, pretty much almost everybody on my floor had football sweats, turf shoes. I made sure, hey, I got some turf shoes, man. If what's your shoe size? Okay, $25.
Yes.
I did what I had to do to survive. So,
and some of those teammates that you had ended up going to the league, right? To the NFL.
yeah.
Did you see that
Marquez,
coming?
Say it again.
Did you see that coming?
I don't think you realize that until they start, the scouts start coming around. But all of them were really good. I mean, Mark Barsotti, Trent Dilfer, Marquez Pope, Lorenzo Neal, Ron Rivers, Malcolm Sebron, who is Malcolm Floyd. Most of you guys know him, Malcolm Floyd. His younger brother played for the Chargers. There's a lot of guys who ended up playing ball that you knew were good, but you didn't know how good they were. J.D. Williams was the number one defensive back taken by the Bills. He played in all those Super Bowls. So there's a lot of guys that I played with who ended up having long careers in the NFL.
What football game at Fresno State stood out to you the most that you still remember? Was it a bowl game? Some kind of highlights that you could share with us?
I think for me, it's my first catch ever. Was at UNLV. That's the first time I ever caught a ball. It was my sophomore year, and it was a broken pass. I caught it and ran probably about another 15, 20 yards and got caught by a lineman to tackle me. But it was my first catch at Fresno State. Was the most memorable one for me.
Yeah, I remember we used to have stories when you used to come home with me to Salinas, and you would my friends here, when they found out how fast you were, right? And we'd go to Closter Park. Yeah, you remember that? We'd go to Closter Park,
Right.
and I remember this story. And once again, us young kids doing some dumb things, as you said, right, earlier.
Right.
I remember you raced one of my friend's cars, right? You remember racing Ernie
Yeah.
down the street?
Ernie,
We
yeah.
closed the street down so you could race him in his little Chevelle.
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah, yeah.
spectacle that day, and because he couldn't believe that you had this world-class speed, you know? What was the fastest you've ever ran the 40-yard dash back in the day at your peak?
I think it was probably about a 4.98 or something like that. 4.9, yeah. Little faster than the 4.5. But I was 6'2" back then. Receivers weren't really as big as I was. 6'2", 195 pounds. So and I got all my speed from running track.
Got it.
I think every football player should run track because that's where I got all my speed from.
Did you consider doing both at Fresno State?
I did run my freshman year. I ran indoor, just one meet, and that was it. My coach was all about football, nothing else. He didn't want us to have earrings, no tattoos. He was all about football. So
Got it.
that was it.
What was your proudest moment as an athlete?
Ooh, wow. I guess it kind of goes in waves. I think my proudest moment in high school, believe it or not, is when I was running the 330 hurdles at a meet, and one of my teammates was running with me, and I had won so many times that I backed off, and he actually won the race, and ended up winning MVP of the meet. And I know that kind of sounds weird, but it taught me a lesson, never to back off. As
Yes.
far as Fresno State is concerned, just being a part of a team that had so many great guys, and the whole time I was there, for me, I really enjoyed playing.
So after your football career, you began to get involved in the community, right?
Yeah.
What inspires you to get involved and to give back? And can you talk about your job now? Because you're doing amazing things, and as we see you on social media posting, kind of like your daily routine at times, and
Yeah.
it's empowering for us that follow you. Talk to our listeners about that.
I think sometimes, well, I started helping the homeless long time ago, over 20, I think it's like 22 years ago. I started in Sacramento, working with the homeless, and then I transitioned over into Las Vegas and started helping the veterans, the homeless veterans. But it's a completely different world. I do it not necessarily for the pay. I mean, the pay is okay, and I feel kind of weird sometimes saying that because I earn a great living helping other people who are less fortunate.
Yes.
But I get gratification. I wake up every day with a purpose. I go to bed every night, even though it's hard, it's tough. But helping people that are less fortunate is gratifying every day. So you have this whole other world. There are people that really don't have anything, a place to shower, a place to sleep, a lot of things that we take for granted. Just being able to take a bath, brush their teeth, say, hey, let me go in the fridge and just grab some water or soda or something like that. We take those things that we take for granted are the things that these people in this community, they're really thankful for. And so for me, it's more of I'm just kind of giving back, and I'm doing what I'm giving back to this community, and because I was so blessed in my life, and so I've probably in the last 6 years been helping the homeless in San Francisco in different capacities. So I'm real proud of that.
And what could people do in their own communities? Let's say they don't live in the San Francisco community, because we have this problem. It's in all our society, right? What can people do to get more involved and to give back like you're doing?
What I will tell you is that it doesn't take a lot. Just the other day, I was driving to work, and I sometimes I'm listening to myself. I'm listening to God, and He just kind of commanded me to just buy some food and give it out. I look at it like this. Sometimes now, especially during the COVID, we aren't spending money that we would normally spend, either at the restaurants or going out to the clubs or doing the things that we would normally do. It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of time. You could take $20 of your money. You can go to a dollar store. You can get 5 loaves of bread. You can buy some peanut butter and some jelly, and you can make sandwiches, cut them up, and give them out to the homeless. Just that act alone, might save someone's life, or brighten their day, or inspire them to do other things. So it's just small things you can do.
And we never know who we're gonna impact or whose life we're gonna change through our actions, and just by being nice to people, right? Just by being nice to people. Has there been a story of a person that you've run across, that you've come across, that you've gotten to know the person and then wondered, wow, how did they get to this point, and what could have prevented it?
I mean, there's a lot of stories. I mean, I can tell you one of somebody who a client I had a conversation with, and she asked me to proofread her resume. I looked at it and I felt dumb myself. I was like, oh, holy smoke. I mean, she had 2 master's degrees, and sometimes people can't handle certain situations and they crack and they have no support system. Or it could be as small as someone losing their job. There was somebody I met who was in the navigation center. He was trying to get back on track. He finally made it to the point where he was going to an interview at the airport, and I remember running into him and saying, "Listen, he said he needed a shirt for interview, and it was against our policy to do it, but I did it anyway. I went and bought him an interview shirt. He got the job, right? And one of the most proudest moments for him, he got the job, right? He ended his probation. He finally got his housing. And this is somebody who, in the beginning, had been sleeping in his car. So there was a slow progression. And I remember when he finally passed his probation, and I saw him, and he said, "Hey, man, I'm taking a trip because he worked for the airline, so he could fly for free." He said, "Hey, man, I'm taking a trip to Vegas this weekend, man, and I'm gonna have a great time." And so that to see that progression in somebody from the beginning, sleeping in their car, no hope, no job, no income, to now gainfully employed, a place to stay, enjoying life is what it's all about.
So wow, that's such a powerful story. Are there any services, organizations out there related to this topic that you could tell our listeners about? Because sometimes we just don't know, right? That they exist. And our basketball academy, through which we do this podcast, is all about giving back to the community and impacting and helping the youth. And we do it through our actions of such low cost to be part of our academy. We offer scholarships for those that can't afford it. You know, we try to recruit coaches that have huge hearts, that have their mind and are comfortable with themselves and giving back to the community without expecting anything in return. We're all volunteers. So are there some organizations out there that maybe we just don't know about that you could share with us on how we can continue to give back and impact communities in our area?
Listen, I follow you, man, and I'm extremely proud of everything you've done, everything you've accomplished, and all the things that you're going to accomplish.
Thank you.
So with that said, it's just real easy. You just kind of um, you don't necessarily need to find an organization. You can do things on your own. Um, whether it's helping the homeless, whether it's helping kids or that have some sexual trauma in their history or abuse in their past. You definitely can Google those things. But what I would do is I would go down to the county office and the city office and just inquire. Um, but I think you guys are doing a great job, and I would, if I were living in Salinas or if I was living anywhere near, I would definitely be a part of what you guys are or what your mission statement is and the things that you guys are doing.
So for our podcast listeners out there, and especially our young ones that are, what advice would you have for them? Because we have many kids who want to be a college football player. They want to run track at the university, and then they have dreams of being a pro athlete. You as a former pro athlete, and your journey now reflecting back, what advice would you give our young podcast listeners out there that are wanting to follow their dream?
Make good decisions. If you make a bad decision, own up to it. Stay focused, stay in school, develop long-lasting relationships, and just enjoy the ride. It's going to be stressful sometimes. There's going to be some ups and downs, but enjoy the ride. But most importantly, stay focused.
And when you talk about, I want to piggyback on what you just said about make good decisions. Social media nowadays for young people, not even actually young people, even adults. Sometimes what you share and what you post and what you repost and like, all that can come back to haunt you. And we always tell kids in our academy, be careful what you think is funny, because it could be offensive to somebody else. That's someone else's daughter, someone else's sister, or, and so to that topic, what do you say?
I always say until you can pay your own bills, right? Until you can pay your rent, pay your own car note, until you're self-sufficient, I think that you should be respectful. You should be respectful at all times, but I think that when you're younger, you have to understand that people see you in a completely different light, and that you should just be respectful. And when you become an adult and you can navigate your own life, then you have the decisions or the options to go left or right. But when you're a kid, when you're a young man, and especially when you want to be a college athlete, and you are asking people to believe in you, you have to make sure that the things that you put out.
Wow. So we're on the downhill of our interview now, and we're here with Will Henry. Ganas is the name of our show, and you exemplify that perfectly as an elite athlete who cares about the underrepresented and shows it through your actions in community involvement. What advice would you have for our podcast listeners when it comes to the topic of ganas? Because ganas, desire, that's you, my man. When I think of ganas, you come up, and that's why we invited you to be a guest on our show, because there's nothing that you can't do, and so what advice would you have for the podcast listeners?
Wow. Well, that's that. First of all, thank you. I think about when I saw that, I thought about how far we've come, right? When I looked up the definition of ganas, it said win. And so based on everything that we've been through in our life, we have won and we're giving back. And so what I would say to the listeners is for every gift that you give back too.
Wow. Powerful. You know, here's as we wind down this interview, we're going to go to our segment we call Carne Asada Talk, right? Backyard barbecuing and talking, you know, some quick fire questions we're going to throw at you, and then just answer it straight from the heart, whatever comes first. Okay, so our first one, what's your favorite movie? We want to get to know you.
Rudy, it's Rudy.
Rudy, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Would you rather have a free haircut that's decent or a haircut that costs you $30?
A haircut that cost me $30.
Okay. What's your motto you live by?
Don't worry about things I have no control over.
Who's your favorite NFL team and why?
I don't have one, but I'm engaged now, so it's the Dallas Cowboys.
Ah. You know, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there.
I know you're a 49er fan.
Yeah. Here's a final one. If you were a movie or TV character, who would you be and why?
Ooh, movie, TV character. Oh, I just watched. I just watched. What's the name of it? Where the guy he eats people. Viper. It starts with a V. I forgot the name of the movie.
Okay. We'll leave
Venom. I'd be Venom.
Venom. Okay, Venom. Wow, it's been great. Will, having you on our podcast. Keep on doing the amazing things that you're doing, and you know, you've inspired many, and hopefully you continue to inspire people and change lives, because that's what you do.
Thank you, man. You keep doing exactly what you're doing, man. Like I said, I'm proud of my brother from another mother, and I love your family. I love you. I love everything that you guys are doing, and yeah. So,
thank you. And that's our show today. We'd like to thank William Henry for being a special guest on our podcast. From our JBA family to yours, continue to lead with ganas.
Thank you for listening to Ganas, Leading from the Heart. If you found this podcast episode interesting, please make sure to share with your family and friends. We have a valuable collection of episodes with inspiring guests. We'd appreciate if you subscribe to our show, Ganas, Leading from the Heart.
Gave me a boost to the top, now I'm fair that we running from the cops. Now this is America.